Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. When Claire told me about the party, she made it sound like an obligation. "It's just one of those things," she said, tying her hair in the mirror. "The boss is throwing it for his team. I have to show up, make an appearance, you know?" I nodded, though something about her tone bothered me. She was too eager in her preparations, too careful with her makeup, too deliberate with the dress she chose. It wasn't her usual work look. It was more polished, more alluring. "You want me to come with you?" I asked casually. Her eyes flickered for half a second before she smiled. "Of course. It'll be good for you to meet some of my co-workers. Just don't get bored. These parties can be long." That flicker stayed with me all day. Claire worked in marketing, and her boss, David, was the kind of man people either admired or hated. He had money, charm, the kind of presence that filled a room. I'd met him once before at a holiday dinner. He had a strong handshake, a wide grin, and a way of holding eye contact that felt just a little too long. That night, I had caught him looking at Claire more than once. She brushed it off when I mentioned it, laughing. He's like that with everyone. But I noticed. The night of the party, we arrived at his house, which looked more like a mansion. Cars lined the driveway, and laughter spilled from the open doors. Inside, the air buzzed with music, clinking glasses, and conversations layered on top of one another. People greeted Claire warmly, shaking her hand, hugging her. She introduced me quickly, then drifted toward David. I hung back, watching. She smiled at him in a way I hadn't seen in months, bright, easy, natural. He leaned close, whispering something that made her laugh. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to mingle. The night stretched on. I made small talk with coworkers, laughed at jokes, sipped my drink, but my eyes kept finding Claire. She moved through the room like she belonged, always circling back to David. Each time the space between them grew smaller, their touches more casual, as if boundaries no longer existed. At one point I stepped outside for air. When I returned, I couldn't find her. I scanned the crowd, my pulse quickening. Something told me to head upstairs. I walked down the hallway, past closed doors, until I heard laughter, hers. The door to a private lounge was half open. I pushed it gently, and there it was. Claire, sitting on David's lap. Her hand rested on his shoulder, his arm wrapped around her waist. They weren't kissing, but the intimacy was undeniable, her face flushed, her smile too wide, his grin smug as if he had already won. For a moment I froze. My heart hammered, my vision blurred. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away, to leave, to let the scene burn into my memory and fuel a divorce lawyer's case. But I didn't. I stepped inside instead. The air shifted instantly. Claire's smile vanished, her body stiffening as she scrambled to her feet. David straightened, in his chair, his grin faltering. "Martin," Claire stammered, her voice cracking, "it's not what it looks like." I cut her off with a raised hand, my eyes locked on David. "No, don't explain. Not yet." David tried to regain his composure, leaning back casually. "Hey man, relax. It was just a joke. She was tired and the seat was taken. We were just—" I stepped closer, my voice low, calm, but sharp enough to cut through his lies. "Do I look like a fool to you?" His grin faltered. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Claire's hands trembled as she reached for me. "Martin, please." I didn't move. I just kept my gaze fixed on David. "Stand up." He hesitated. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Slowly, he rose to his feet. The room was silent now, the music from downstairs muffled, the laughter distant. It was just the three of us, suspended in a moment that would define everything. I stepped even closer, so close I could see the sweat forming at his temples. "You think you can take what's mine? Sit there smugly in your own house, with my wife on your lap, and I'll just walk away?" His bravado cracked. "Listen, man, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "And now, you're going to beg me to stop." His eyes widened, panic flickering. Claire gasped, covering her mouth. "Martin, don't—" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My calmness scared him more than shouting ever could. I leaned closer, my words precise, deliberate. Beg me to stop. Beg me to walk out of this room and leave your reputation intact. Beg me not to tell your wife, your investors, your employees, exactly what you were doing at your own party. David's face drained of color. He swallowed hard, his voice trembling. Please, please don't. I made a mistake. It won't happen again. Claire sobbed softly behind me, her hands shaking. I straightened, my chest tight with fury but my voice steady. That's what I thought. Without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving him standing there, broken, humiliated in his own house. Claire followed quickly, tears streaming, whispering apologies I ignored. Downstairs the party roared on, oblivious. People laughed, clinked glasses, carried on as if nothing had happened. But for us, everything had changed. That night, as we drove home in silence, I realized something. The revenge wasn't just in catching them. It was in making him beg, in turning his arrogance into desperation, in knowing that every time he looked at Claire from now on, he'd remember the moment I made him crumble in his own home, and this was only the beginning. The car ride home felt like driving through a tunnel with no end. Streetlights flashed across the windshield, each one slicing through the silence between us. Claire sat curled against the passenger door, her hands shaking in her lap, her eyes red from tears she couldn't control. I kept both hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead, my jaw clenched so tightly, I thought my teeth might crack. Finally, she broke. "Martin, please, say something." I didn't answer. I wanted her to sit in the silence, to feel the weight of it pressed down on her chest. She had filled our life with noise, laughter, lies, excuses. But silence was what broke her. "Nothing happened," she insisted, her voice trembling. "You saw me sitting there, but it wasn't what it looked like. He was drunk and I cut her off with a look, my eyes finally meeting hers. The way she froze told me she saw everything she needed in that glance. Anger, yes. Betrayal, yes. But more than anything, clarity. She realized in that single second that excuses would mean nothing now. We drove the rest of the way in silence. When we got home, she followed me inside, still pleading. "Martin, please, I love you. You have to believe me." I hung my coat without a word. She tried again, louder now. "I made a mistake, but it's not what you think. You can't just stand there and look at me like that." I turned slowly, my voice low and steady. "You let another man put his hands on you. You let him sit there with you on his lap like I don't exist. You did it in his house, at his party, surrounded by people who would have loved to watch me crumble. And you think this was just a mistake?" Her lips quivered, but no words came. I walked past her into the bedroom and shut the door. That night she cried herself to sleep on the couch while I stared at the ceiling, planning. Because I realized something important. David wasn't afraid of me as a husband. He was afraid of me as a threat to his image. That's why he begged. Not because he regretted, but because he feared exposure. A man like him could cheat, could manipulate, could play games with power. But what he couldn't afford was scandal. And that was where my power lay. The next day, Claire moved carefully, like she was walking on glass. She cooked breakfast, set the table, tried to make small talk, but the air was heavy with unspoken truths. I watched her closely, saying little, letting her stew in the silence. That afternoon, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Martin, please. Let's talk. Man to man. David." I stared at the screen for a long moment before putting the phone down. I didn't reply. Silence, again, was more powerful than any words. Hours later, another message came. "You don't understand. This could ruin me. Please, I'll do anything. Just keep this between us." I smirked. He was unraveling faster than I expected. Claire noticed me looking at my phone and asked nervously, "Who is it?" I didn't answer. Her face went pale and she quickly turned away. That night, I finally spoke more than a sentence to her. "What did he promise you?" She blinked. "What?" I repeated slowly. "What did he promise you? A promotion? A better position? Or was it just attention you thought you weren't getting here?" Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't like that. I never wanted—" "Yes, you did." I interrupted. You wanted exactly what you got. You wanted to feel wanted. You wanted to play a dangerous game sitting on his lap in his house while I was just a few rooms away. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise." She sobbed quietly, covering her face with her hands. I let her cry, but inside I felt nothing but cold resolve. Over the next week, David's messages grew frantic. "Martin, please, let me explain. I swear, nothing happened. It was innocent. I have a family. I can't lose everything over this. Please tell me what you want. Money? A deal? Anything." I saved every message, screenshotting them neatly, filing them into a folder the same way I had done with Claire's lies in the past. Because I knew sooner or later these would serve their purpose. Claire, meanwhile, began living like a shadow of herself. She hovered constantly, trying to help, trying to be close, but I kept her at arm's length. Every touch she offered, I stepped away. Every word she spoke, I let hang in the air. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't even accuse. And that silence crushed her more than fury ever could. One evening, while Sophie was in her room drawing, Claire cornered me in the kitchen. "Martin, I'm begging you, don't destroy us over this. Don't destroy me." I looked at her, calm, detached. "You destroyed yourself the second you let him touch you. I'm just deciding what to do with the pieces." Her shoulders slumped and she broke into sobs. I didn't comfort her. That night, I lay awake thinking. Revenge wasn't just about punishing them. It was about making sure they could never forget what they had done. David had begged already, but I wanted more. I wanted him to carry the fear with him every time he walked into a boardroom, every time he shook hands with a client, every time he thought about stepping out of line again. And Claire, I wanted her to remember the silence, to remember the way her own daughter looked at her when she realized Mommy wasn't the same anymore. The opportunity came 2 weeks later. David's company was hosting a large event, something important with investors attending. Invitations had gone out, and Claire brought one home, her hands trembling as she handed it to me. "I don't have to go," she whispered quickly. "We can skip it." I took the invitation, studied it, and slipped it into my pocket. "No, we'll be there." Her face drained of color, but she didn't argue. That night, she barely slept. I could hear her tossing and turning on the couch. I lay awake, my plan forming clearly in my mind. Because revenge wasn't about destroying someone in one dramatic blow. It was about control, about patience, about knowing that every time David looked at me across that event hall, he would see the man who caught him, the man who made him beg, the man who held his reputation in the palm of his hand. And Claire, she would stand beside me, remembering the night she chose another man's lap over her husband's arms. And she would feel the silence stretching between us like a chasm she could never cross again. That was the real punishment, and it was only just beginning. The night of David's company event, the air felt different before we even left the house. Claire dressed in silence, her hands shaking as she fixed her earrings. She chose a modest dress, one that covered more than it revealed, as if she thought fabric could cover betrayal. I put on my suit without a word. Sophie was at my sister's for the evening, which was a relief. I didn't want her anywhere near what was coming. The drive was quiet. Claire fidgeted with her clutch, glancing at me every few minutes, but I kept my eyes on the road. She wanted reassurance, maybe even anger. Anything to break the silence. But silence had become my weapon, and I wasn't ready to put it down. When we arrived, the venue was buzzing with light and laughter. Investors mingled with executives, waiters carried trays of champagne. A jazz band played softly in the corner. I could feel Claire's tension in the way she clung to my arm, her grip a little too tight. And then, there he was. David. He stood near the stage, greeting guests with his usual charm, his grin wide, his handshake firm. But when his eyes landed on me, the mask slipped. Just for a second, but enough. Fear flickered. His smile faltered before he forced it back. He wasn't afraid of the investors. He wasn't afraid of the event failing. He was afraid of me. I walked straight toward him, Claire trailing behind like a shadow. His posture stiffened as I approached. "Martin," he said, forcing cheer into his voice. "Glad you could make it." I shook his hand, squeezing just enough to remind him of the night in his house. Of course. Wouldn't miss it. His eyes darted nervously to Claire, then back to me. Can we talk? Privately? I leaned closer, my voice calm. Later. Right now focus on your party. I'll let you know if it ends on your terms or mine. His face paled and I walked away, leaving him to entertain his guests with shaking hands. Claire tugged at my sleeve once we were out of earshot. What are you planning? She whispered. I looked at her, my voice steady. I don't plan anymore. I act. For the next hour I mingled, smiling, shaking hands, making small talk with people I'd never met before. But every so often I caught David's eyes across the room, wide and frantic, watching me like a man waiting for an axe to fall. Claire stayed close, her face tight with worry, sipping champagne like it was medicine. Finally, when the speeches began, I made my move. David stood on stage, thanking everyone for coming, praising his team, talking about growth and vision and success. His words rolled out smoothly, but I could see the sweat on his forehead, the tremor in his hands as he gripped the microphone. I waited until the applause died down, then approached him as he stepped off the stage. My hand on his shoulder stopped him mid-step. He turned, his smile frozen. Martin, he said, his voice strained. Please. I leaned close, my words low enough for only him to hear. You begged me once already. Do it again. Right here. Right now. His eyes widened in panic. Not here. Please. Not in front of them. Then give me what I want, I said evenly. What do you want? He asked desperately. I smiled faintly. I want you to remember. Every time you stand on that stage, every time you look at these people, I want you to remember that I could destroy you with one word. That your empire, your reputation, your career, all of it rests on my silence, and you'll never know when that silence will end. He swallowed hard, his composure cracking. I'll do anything, just, please. Then beg, I whispered again. His lips trembled. He glanced around, making sure no one was close enough to hear, then whispered, Please, don't ruin me. I'm begging you. I patted his shoulder and stepped back. That's what I thought. I walked away, leaving him trembling in front of his own investors. Claire caught up to me near the back of the room, her voice urgent. Martin, what did you say to him? I looked at her calmly. Nothing you need to know. Her eyes filled with tears. Please don't destroy him. Don't destroy me. I tilted my head. Destroy you? You did that yourself. I'm just giving you a mirror. The rest of the night passed like a blur. David tried to regain his composure, but I could see the cracks. His laugh was too loud, his smile too forced, his charm brittle. And Claire clung to me, trembling, knowing the life she had gambled was already slipping through her fingers. When we left, the night air felt heavy. Claire broke the silence in the car, her voice raw. Martin, please. I'll do anything. Just don't end this. I glanced at her. You already ended it. You ended it the moment you sat on his lap. The only question now is how much of the wreckage you get to keep. She cried softly the rest of the way home. In the weeks that followed, David's messages grew less frequent, then stopped altogether. He avoided me, avoided Claire, avoided any situation where our paths might cross. He knew I had him on a leash and he hated it. That was the point. He would carry the fear forever, never knowing when I might decide to speak. As for Claire, she tried to rebuild, but the silence between us never lifted. She cooked, she cleaned, she tried to show affection, but every touch felt hollow. Sophie, too young to understand the details, sensed the distance. She clung to me more, asked why Mommy cried so much. I told her gently that some mistakes can't be undone, but that I would always be there for her. And that was the truth. Eventually, Claire begged for counseling, begged for forgiveness, begged for another chance. I gave her none of it. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. One evening, as she sat across from me at the kitchen table, her face streaked with tears, she whispered, "You're not shouting, you're not leaving, you're not forgiving. What are you doing to me?" I leaned back, my voice calm. "I'm making you live with it. Every day. The silence is your punishment. The fear is his. And that's my revenge." Her sobs filled the room, but I felt nothing, because I knew I had already won. David, the powerful boss, would never forget the night he begged in his own house, and again at his own event. And Claire, The wife who chose a lap over loyalty would never escape the silence I left her in. That was enough.